Okay, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you all on this magnificent project you're doing. I'm really overwhelmed. I asked you to come to Et Chaim because we are talking about Sammy, Benaim alav hashalom. And this was his home, his first home. On this teva, he was Chazan for 53 years. That means 53 years, same parasha, every Shabbat, consistently, every Chag, all the Yamim Noraim. He was a tokea. He did everything in the synagogue. He looked after it. But Sammy was much more than a Chazan and a tokea of Et Chaim. He was somebody who had a heart bigger than himself. Now, many stories are coming up of people whom he helped in extremely difficult circumstances, which I'm not going to disclose, but there are few people in this community whom his chesed did not touch. The mitzvot was one Rosh Hashanah, which was an extremely hot day, and when he was taking the shofar with him. And I asked him, where are you going? I'm going to the prison to blow the shofar for some inmates. You realize how far the prison is? It's a mitzvah. You have to do it. He would do the Benaim. People will come to him, Sukkot. Many people streaming here. My pitom is broken. Don't have enough aravot. He would satisfy everybody. Never was there a sick person in hospital whom he did not visit. Every single person. Somebody was unaware. He would go and cheer them up in his own specific way. He was head sheikh of the Chevra Kadisha. Spent hours, countless hours in the camp arranging things. Sammy was a man of shalom. He had people, he had quarrels, he would talk to both of them, like Aaron Cohen. Sammy was bigger than himself. We'll never forget him. May he, from Shamayim, pray for our community, for his family, and Hashem bless you all for what you're doing. It is menucha. Thank you very much.
A huge vacuum in the community, and we will always remember him for all the good things, all the mitzvot and masim tovim that he did, and we should always remember him for that and many other things. And we had a very close relationship. He used to sit near me in tefillah every day, so we always used to have a chat at the end, and I learned something from him, that after tefillah every day he used to say Mizmor David Hashem Roi 3 times, and he told me that's a good segula, and I learned that from him, and I continue doing it. Once I heard from him that I've been doing it myself. Sammy is a person that always used to remember everything, all the nahalot. So whenever I had a nahala of a grandparent or a parent, or whatever, he would always come up to me because he knew beforehand. And whenever I was called up in the Norashika, I didn't have to tell him who all the berachot were for. He already knew the family and so on. He was very special in that and many other ways.
I want to also say something that really touched all of us, my children and all our family. When Tisha B'Av happened every year, he behaved like his whole being became extremely emotional and sad about on Tisha B'Av, as if a young child, this new toy breaks and the whole world is destroyed for the child. Yeah, something remained very much in our mind is that every year when it came to the moment to say, and he said also in Spanish, that how many years the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, he would say with such emotion and crying, you know, and he put the whole Beit HaKnesset in the morning. He decorated all in Tisha B'Av mood. The chair was piled up. He looked like the Etz Chaim looked a mini destroyed Beit HaKnesset. So it will be very difficult to replace him. And my tefillot, our tefillot, they should the spark of Kedusha that he left in this world, we should grab it and emulate him and try to get as close as what he did in the chesed between man and man and in the shul. Yeah. Okay.
Hola. Cuando mi familia vino aquí a Gibraltar, encontramos a Sammy particularmente, y resulta que Sammy y su familia habían vivido en Tetuán durante muchos años. Y en Tetuán fueron vecinos de los abuelos de mi mujer. Y por lo tanto conocieron a mis suegros y a toda la familia. Entonces, cuando nos encontramos aquí, nos recibió la verdad como si fuéramos parte de la familia. De hecho, Sammy era muy cariñoso con todo el mundo y así se mostró durante todo el tiempo que le conocí. Hay una Mishnah en Pirkei Avot que yo creo que le define a él muy bien. Dice, Ohev et hamakom, ohev et hambiriot umekarevam la Torah. Y él eso hacía siempre. Siempre recibía a todo el mundo en la sinagoga en particular, yo lo veía con mucha frecuencia, por eso que estaba siempre ahí. Era muy acogedor con todo el que venía de fuera, aunque no lo conociera de nada. Le hacía subir al Sefer, hacer, en fin, cualquier mitzvah que correspondiera en aquel día, y siempre se ofrecía para ayudarles, preguntaba qué necesitaban y tal y cual. Y por supuesto, cuando nosotros vinimos aquí, pues nos atendió de esa manera, una forma muy cariñosa de una familia, como decía antes. Claro, a lo largo del tiempo pudo observar que realmente era un hombre de unas cualidades humanas increíbles, siempre pendiente de los demás, de sus hermanos, de todo el mundo. Yo comprobé que, por ejemplo, todos los sábados iba a visitar al home, a los enfermos, al hospital. No tenía hora, él casi no descansaba, estaba siempre pendiente de los demás.
Sammy para mí fue y sigue siendo un gigante, a giant of a man. But I spoke before to the kids and I explained that you learn from Moshe Rabbeinu the word humble. He was a torch full of light that carried the humbleness of Moshe Rabbeinu beautifully. He knew the parasha, any parasha at any given moment, backwards, forwards. Never said a thing. Never mentioned anything. He was there to say the parasha for us, Minyan, if we had a problem with the nets, then he would go to Norashika, carry on. This was Sammy. This was Sammy. And we lost him. He's gone. Now the vacuum is there, and unfortunately it's going to take a long time for it to be filled. Like all vacuums, created by people who are humble, and because of the humbleness, we don't realize their greatness when they are with us. We worked very, very closely together in the Hevra. Another way to recognize the greatness of the man was that there was never a problem whilst he was in the Hevra. Never a problem. Problem did not exist. And I can assure you, there were humongous problems. But if Sammy was there were no problems. And we used to laugh. We used to laugh because, it was, it was very difficult. And at the end, when everything happened, he used to come up to me and say, you see, Joe, everything went well. Yeah, Baruch Hashem, everything went well. But for him, this was natural. You don't know if he ate that day. You don't know if he slept that night. You don't know nothing about the man because the man was a simple man. And you never knew what was going on. He carried with him the news that he was dying. I don't know how he did it. I don't know. But he did it. And he carried on smiling, and you never knew if that night he slept or if night he was in pain. You don't know. He never showed to anybody. And we have to learn that we make a lot of complaints in life about nothing. Learn from these people. This is my message to all of you. We have to learn from being so simple as Moshe Rabbeinu, humble, peace-loving, and great knowledge without telling anybody about it.
One thing I will always remember Sammy for is his Yirat Shamayim. Whenever you learn about Yirat Shamayim, I would always have to picture somebody who, in my life, I could embody this midah of Yirat Shamayim, and it was always Sammy in this. The reason for that is because whenever there was anything to do with Ruchniut, be it tefillah, or be it a Torah, anything to do with Torah, he would always be there. Whenever it was a shur, he was always sitting in the front. And on the other side, for example, whenever there was a compliment in a siman, he would always rush to be the first one to open the cemetery to make sure that everything was ready for when the kahal came. I always remember once in Shabbat I was there early, and there was a minyan in Etz Chaim, which was very common. And as we were approaching Baruch Shamar, we were saying the Lam Natzeach, and all of a sudden we finished Igdal, and we were like, "Where's Sammy?" He had disappeared, and we were like, we didn't know. We were a bit embarrassed to start Baruch Shamar without him because he was obviously the Chazan, and we didn't want to start the tefillah without him. And when he came back, like 5 or 10 minutes later, he said that he had just gone to somebody's house to take somebody out from Avel. And he put this in. He was always the one who did these things. But that he always besniut, never made a big fuss about things. He just got them done.
Congratulations to young men for this terrific initiative. It's really very wonderful, very heartwarming. You've taken upon yourselves to make this little tribute to Mr. Sammy Benaim. And it says a lot about the man himself, who's touched the hearts of so many people, and each one of you must have had a very personal relationship with him. I would like to tell you a little anecdote about myself. I was a few years ago sitting by the River Nile in Luxor on Shabbat morning, mind my own business, read my Chumash. A man walks behind me and he says, "Shabbat Shalom." Shabbat Shalom. And how do you know I was Jewish? He said, "I can imagine an Egyptian reading Chumash. With the Rashi, it must be a Jew." Anyway, so where do you come from Gibraltar? Gibraltar, I know someone from Gibraltar. I know you do, I told him. It's Mommy Levita. No. It wasn't Mommy Levita, it was somebody else. Somebody, I can't remember his name now. He supplies eggs to the... couldn't think who he was. Who supplies them? A company supplying eggs. His son learns in the Kollel. And goes, there must be Sammy Benaim. And it suddenly occurred to me then, that aspect of Sammy, he actually had a job and worked and made a parnasah, was something which is almost irrelevant to me, because his life was so much involved in mitzvot and ma'asim tovim, helping people in the chevra and the synagogue. The fact that he was actually also a human being, had a family, and had a job and a business, had to pay his bills in the month, something which totally eluded me. About 10 or 12 years ago, we organised a trip for Gibraltarians to go to Krakow and to Auschwitz. And Mr. Sammy Benaim, he joined the trip. I think there were 10 of us all together. And he was actually at Tzibur, interesting places like Bobova Shul, which is now being renovated. And we went to Auschwitz. I was most impressed when we went to Auschwitz when we came to the crematorium there. At the end of it, we said Kaddish, and he took out a shofar and blew. It was the most moving experience. None of us expected to cut a shofar, blew the shofar in memory of the millions who had perished there in Auschwitz. But it was wonderful company, and he was a tremendous member of the group. He's lost to all of us. We'll never really recover from it. It's a person that's impossible. It's an act impossible to follow. And may Hakadosh Baruch Hu, may Almighty have mercy on his soul. Should be Melis Yosher for us in Shemayim.
Amen. I considered Sammy a good friend, even though he could have been my dad. He could have been my father. He was old enough to be my father. He's got children of my age. But Sammy was somebody who was approachable. He was friendly. He was always willing to help. Sammy spent so many years of his life giving of himself to Etz Chaim. He was a chazan there for 53 years. I know because we talked about it when we were doing the machazorim for Etz Chaim, and he mentioned to me that he'd been there as a chazan for 53 years. But Sammy was really, he was the life and soul of the synagogue. He used to do repairs, he used to clean, he used to take care of the books, he used to do the sefarim, he used to absolutely from A to Z. He was running the synagogue. It was his life. He dedicated himself to it, obviously never for a penny. It was all l'shem shamayim, and really that's something that all of us can learn from. That dedication to the tzibur, to the general public. He also dedicated himself to the chevra. He was the sheikh of the chevra, but for many years he was working through the ranks of the chevra. He was also sheikh of Beladores, and I know from my personal experience, I am in charge of the rotas for the Guardia. And Sammy would always tell me, whenever you got an issue where you can't find somebody, you call me. Even though as Sheikh of the Chevra, he really didn't have to go and do warriors, but he was always there. He would actually go himself, even when he was sick in the last few months of his life. I didn't know he was sick, but I would call him to ask him if we could do warrior, and he would go. Often in a lot of pain, he would himself go to do the warrior. That was an example to all of us. He also served for many years on the managing board of the community. We actually overlapped for a while as well. For 5 or 6 years I was in the board as well with him, and Sammy always had a good sense of humor, which he brought to the meetings. I don't know whether it's true or not, but we had a running joke in the managing board that we didn't have meetings on Thursday nights because that was the night that Sammy would have his bath for Shabbat. I don't know if it was true or not. Sammy certainly never said to the contrary, even though we mentioned it in front of him and stuff like that. He would laugh. So I really don't know whether it was true or not to this day, but it was something that Sammy was happy to go along with. He was unassuming, of course. I had the zechut of doing the machazorim or Rosh Hashanah and Kippur for Etz Chaim. I regret that I didn't get a chance to show him the finished product, but he worked for it, and he was conscious of the fact that his days were numbered. Yet he wanted to make sure, and he pushed me to do those books because he wanted to make sure that the synagogue had its own nusach that it could perpetuate. So really, it's fantastic for his memory that those books are there. And Sammy was exemplary in helping people. Of course, everybody knows the chesed he would do, a lot of visiting the sick in the hospital, visiting the sick in their houses as well. He used to spend a lot of time in the hospital and visiting people, and there's a lot of things that he used to do that we don't know about, and we might not even ever find out. But Sammy was somebody who was unassuming. He was there to get the job done, and he didn't need any kavod, he didn't need bells and whistles or anything. He even helps people from beyond the grave. I'm just going to finish off with this little tidbit that my son Moshe, he was in yeshiva in Israel, and he told me the other day, he said he wanted to go to Har HaMenuchot, to Zorea,
Hola, muy buenas. Mi nombre es Mustafa. Quería hablarle, por favor, de este señor que nos acaba de dejar hace poco tiempo, el señor Sammy Benaim. Yo lo conocía hace 35 años cuando yo llegué a Gibraltar de buscar una nueva vida para un futuro mejor. Y con él yo he logrado el trabajo, la estabilidad y conocí a toda la familia de aquel día hasta hoy un día, como una familia, como hermanos. Es que hay miles de historias con este hombre. La verdad que no por ser él, es su forma de ser. No busca mal para nadie. Siempre está buscando para ayudar gente, que sea de la comunidad suya o de otra comunidad, le da igual. Tú lo dices que a este fulano le falta algo y enseguida es el primero que da la mano al bolsillo y le ayuda. Y durante ese tiempo yo conocí a los niños, creciendo los niños de Sammy, la familia. Y como esto, hay miles de historias que yo he pasado con este señor, y la mayoría son buenas, pero 2 me se han quedado en el corazón para toda la vida. Había un hombre que estaba trabajando con nosotros y ha llegado su hora y se ha muerto. Y como él se enteraba tan temprano aquel día, llamó temprano para mí y me dice, por favor, asegúrate que este hombre llegará en su casa, a su familia, y yo me encargaré con mi familia de todos los gastos hasta su casa. Eso tiene que ser una cosa muy noble de una persona así. Y la segunda es que yo quería, intentando para que me venda un coche, y él intentaba que no. Y cuando yo insistió, me dice que no, que yo siento que el coche tiene algo mal y no quiero que tú lo lleves y te pasa algo y yo no me lo voy a perdonar a mí mismo. Una persona así es muy difícil hoy en día de encontrar así. Por eso siempre me he sentido mucho su muerte y la familia lo saben, pero es la ley de la vida que hacen.
I'd like to relate an anecdote about our younger days with Sammy. You know, Sammy wasn't born in Gibraltar. He was born in Tetuan, and he came to Gibraltar when he was about 13. He must have been 13 because he was only bar mitzvah, and his brother, Rabbi Yaakov, had his bar mitzvah in Gibraltar. But anyway, Sammy came to Gibraltar at the age of 13, and we became friends, we were in a group, and because he was a bit older than the others, he was the first one to obtain a driving license. Now his late father, Rabbi Shalom Benaim, he had a big business he was a scrap dealer. And in his business, he had a huge Land Rover. And of course, no sooner did Sammy pass his driving license than off he went with his Land Rover. And he used to take us out in the evenings for drives. And he was a great driver because he loved to go up Europa Road, and then once you get past the convent, there's a little side road on the right-hand side that leads down to GBC. And the Land Rover would just fit in with 1 inch to spare on either side. And he would drive up Europa Road at a fast speed, never slowing down, and suddenly swerve the steering wheel into the side road, and never once did he scratch the side of the Land Rover into that narrow little road. So we loved doing that with him.
Sammy Benaim was a very jovial man. He was always happy and joking. He used to come to my shop to buy, and when I would tell him the total of the bill, he would ask me, "No puede ser menos? Can't it be less?" On a more serious note, he would upkeep an old custom that elders of the community would keep. That was on the Petirat Moshe Rabbeinu, the day that Moshe Rabbeinu was born and died. He would go to this, in his case, to Etz Chaim Synagogue, Nora Chica, and would sit there in the afternoon and pray, and there was a special seder he would do. Myself and some other people would go there, and we would sit with him, and he used to tell us stories about Moshe Rabbeinu, how Moshe Rabbeinu would sort of plead with Hashem to stay in this world. For I don't know how many times he did, until Hashem said no. So it makes me believe that Sammy, even though he didn't tell anybody how ill he was, maybe he was pleading with Hashem until he realized that Hashem wanted him with him, and that's it, you know. And I will always have very fond memories of him.
Gibraltar's Jewish community is warm and friendly and welcoming. What makes this community so special are its pillars, role models, and community leaders, people like Sammy Benaim, Zichrono Livracha. His warmth, smile, and personal interest in me and others was very unique. It left an impression on me personally, which could literally make my day. He never walked past me without shaking my hand, asking how I was. Sammy's sudden departure has left us all shocked and sad. May his memory be blessed, and may the Gibraltar community be inspired by what he stood for, what he has achieved for himself, for his family, and for our community.
Sammy was a compatriot of mine. I was friendly with him in my young days. Then I left Gibraltar for over 20 years. Now I came back. I found Sammy as a big Talmid Chacham, very learned, self-made. One of the things that most impressed me about Sammy, and there are many, many good things about him, as you've heard from other people, but one of the things that impressed me most was his love for everything. He loved people. He loved helping people. Everything he did was with a kind heart, with a lot of love, a lot of affection. He never took offense. Even when people upset him, he would still find love in his heart. And for me, that is how I shall always remember him, for the love he had for people.
So I'm asked to say a story about our beloved Sammy Benaim, Zichrono Livracha. When we were young, he was older than I was, and the frontier was closed, and there was very little to do in Gibraltar. We couldn't go to Spain, etc. So Sammy took the driving license and could drive a car. And on Sundays, because he knew we had very little to do, he used to take us, the younger boys, in his car around Gibraltar. He was a fantastic driver. And for us, it was a treat. So you could see that Sammy Zichrono Livracha was a man involved in chesed even when he was a young boy, even when he was 18. And the community has lost one of its big pillars. I remember when I spoke at the Shaloshim, at the breakfast, I asked a number of questions. Who is going to do this? Who is going to do that? Sammy did a lot for the community when he was young, when he was middle-aged, and when he was older. He was always there, always helping people. And I remember that anecdote since we were a little boy, that even then he had other things to do, but he spent time taking us youngsters round Gibraltar so that we would enjoy a bit Sunday.
Okay, I'll go back to ancient history, 1956. 1956 was a very, very crucial year for Morocco. It was the independence of Morocco, and Jews began to leave the country. And we were fortunate in Gibraltar that the old Mr. Shalom Benaim with his family came here to live. And amongst them, he came with his sons, And Rabbi Yaakov Benaim was 12 years old when he came to Gibraltar, and his brother Sam was 13 years old. And so at the time we used to study in what we used to call the yeshiva in Talmud Torah. There used to be a room there, we used to call it the yeshiva. And there Rabbi Patvici, the rabbi of town, he would give a shiurim to all of us. And so Sammy used to come to shiurim, and so did Rabbi Yaakov Benaim. And Rabbi Patvici used to say that Sammy was more intelligent than Rabbi Yaakov Benaim. That was what Rabbi Patvici used to say, that Sammy was more intelligent than. Now, just saying this is enough. I won't say anything more. I just want to say that Sammy was a brilliant, extremely intelligent person, and just by saying that he's more intelligent than Rabbi Yaakov Benaim, it's the greatest thing that I can say about Sammy. Okay?
I'm honored to be here in Et Hayim, which is a very important synagogue for me, and I've got deep roots also in the synagogue. But moreover, that my grandson Jonathan Gross is interviewing me, and I'm doing this Zechor Liracha to a very good and esteemed friend of mine, Sammy Benaim. In order to talk about Sammy, I've got to go back to 1958, when I was 12 years old and Sammy was 13. So, as most of you may know, Sammy spent his childhood in Tetuan. My late father, Isaac Hassan, who was a Parnas at Nefusot Yehuda for many years, was the accountant at D. Benaim & Co., which was a Gibraltar trading company, and my father was an accountant. The company, as per the name, was owned by David Benaim's grandfather, David Benaim OBE, who was the president of the community, and Don Shalom Benaim, who was also Tamid Chacham, who was Sammy's father, who used to live in Tetuan. I very distinctively remember at that time I was in the grammar school, which was a circular school which most Jewish boys had to go to. There was no Jewish secondary school, and I used to go there from Monday to Friday. We used to have rabbis coming to give us religious lessons, but on Sunday mornings we had to go to Talmud Torah, where the rabbis used to give us Kodesh lessons there. I remember my father telling me one Sunday morning, when the Hebrew school finishes, come and meet me at the Martillo, which is what the piazza is now, as I've got to introduce you to two special boys which have come to Gibraltar, and I want you to be their friend. So I still very distinctively remember meeting my father and walking towards the house where the Sammy Benaim used to live when he was young, and this is where the Presto dry cleaners is now. Miss Don Shalom Benaim walked towards us, holding the hands of two boys, still with short trousers, because in those days boys used to wear short trousers, and one was Sammy, and the other one was Jacobi, who later on became Rabbi Jacob. Since then, I developed a strong friendship with Sammy and also with Rabbi Jacob, as they acknowledged I was the first friend in Gibraltar. I introduced them to all young people in Gibraltar, and I always kept a very close bond with both of them, but especially with Sammy. Obviously, as we grew older, our lives went a bit apart, because Sammy was very, very involved in synagogue matters, in community matters, and so on, and I wasn't involved as much as he was, but still we crossed our paths many times. Sammy was a person who was full of chesed, and there are a number of things which I'm eternally grateful for Sammy, especially when my late first wife, was very ill. Sammy was a pillar of comfort. He used to come and see me and give me support. I would say Tehillim with Sammy, and for this I was ever grateful for him. Also, as time went on, my I heard all the chesed that Sammy was doing, and his love for this synagogue, Et Hayim, was immense. And at that time, the minyan, especially on Shabbat, was very thin on the ground. And with Sammy, I always had a commitment. Even if I went, my synagogue was Nefusot Yehuda, I would always come by this synagogue, look up to Sammy, and if Sammy needed minyan or anything doing, I was there for him because I knew that Sammy was always there for me. He also, as my mother was getting older, and sometimes she could not go out for periods of time, Sammy, out of his own free will, would go and spend, which I didn't know till afterwards, go and spend his own time and give of his time and comfort my mother, who was an elderly lady. Also, I know Sammy did a lot of anonymous things, and whenever I could, I would help him out and keep this anonymity till the day. There is one anecdote which just happened recently, which I want to retell, and coincidentally, last night I was having a shiur with Rabbi Wachnish, and although I'm not a scholar, but we did a Gemara, which at the end of the day, the moral of the Gemara was that whatever happened to one, whether it was good or bad and so on, it was all in the hand of Hashem, and it was all part of a plan which we as humans could not understand, but it all fell into place. Coincidentally, I told him, look, I had, and that was last night, I had an incident with Sammy Benaim just a few weeks before he was passed away, and this was that his wife Annie had lost a sister in Israel, and she was sitting Shiva, but I was away from Gibraltar, and I came back on a Friday, and I could not go on the Shabbat to give my compliment, but I thought the Shiva would end on the Sunday. This was a hot Sunday in August. I thought Annie was still sitting Shiva, so I went with my wife to their house on a hot Sunday afternoon, which normally I would have been in Spain, but that Sunday afternoon I had a personal issue which I had to be in Gibraltar, so I curtailed my visit to Spain. When I got to the house, I knocked at the door. There doesn't seem to be anybody there. I knocked again. I told my wife, look, perhaps we've come at the wrong time, and eventually Annie opened the door. Basically, what happened was that the Shiva had been ended that Sunday morning, and they're not sitting Shiva anymore. But notwithstanding, the hospitality of Sammy and Annie, they told me, come in, don't worry, I know you've come thinking with the Shiva, but we're friends, come in. And I stayed that afternoon in Sammy Benaim's house, 2 hours talking with Sammy, reminiscing of all our old days, our friendship, what we had done, things which had happened, and so on. I said, what a coincidence, all this has happened, because if I would have gone to the Shiva, I would have only spent a couple of minutes where there would have been people in the house just talking to Sammy, and I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of quality time with Sammy. When I told the story to Rabbi Wachnish, it was yesterday evening, he said, oh wow, that's something you've got to tell, but it's just something which must have been planned up there for you. Notwithstanding, last night I received a phone call from a very good friend, Mr. Joe Atias, and he told me, look, can you come tomorrow night to Et Chaim, because you want to be interviewed on your friendship with Sammy Benaim. So here I am, and there must be something up there who's moving the pieces, because it's all very coincidental, which I'm happy to be here. Okay?
I was asked by the youth of our community to say some words on our wonderful and beloved Sammy Benaim. It was a bit of a challenge. There's so much to say. I have so many memories with him, and because of my privileged position, I've managed to build a relationship with a man that under normal circumstances I probably would have just said hello and goodbye. So matzot, the matzot, every year we used to have that moment of mass hysteria, bringing in the boxes. Sammy, cuando viene? He'd open the door, call me at home, cuánta caja, and then of course people who wouldn't pay, and he's like, don't worry, I'll pay. So Sammy was always out of pocket. That's the first thing I'd like to say. Also with the lulavim, he'd come in, all that was organized with the payment, but I know that he always ended up giving of himself. So that's one of the qualities that Sammy had. He was generous. He was a generous man. He was also generous with his comedy. We used to laugh so much. We always used to have a giggle. He always had a joke and something funny and something uplifting to say. And the truth is that even though now we know he was not in the best of health, he always came with a smile. Even during the last few months, and the truth is I used to say, Sammy, you look a bit tired. Is something wrong? No, my allergies are playing up, but I'm fine. Always with a smile on his face. And then we'd have the times like the Pidyon HaNefesh, when he'd come, he'd hear something in the community and he'd say to me, Susan, cógeme 118 libra, always 118 libra, cógeme 118 libra in coins, and I'm going to say Pidyon. And I would go up and listen to him because he said it with so much love and so heartfelt, because who's going to say Pidyon for us? Somebody who cares about us. And he cared about us. He cared about everybody. He would ask me occasionally, Susan, me enteraba esto es verdad. Mira, no quiero hablar la shonara, pero esto es verdad. What can we do? And I would speak to him about it, and he'd try and, work it out, and he'd be upset. He was a man who felt our pain, and he was a man who loved his family tremendously, and he was a pillar of our community, and somebody who is and will be so missed just because he was him. And also he was unpretentious. He never came with airs and graces. He never came lording around. He'd just shuffle about and hear his little cough upstairs and Aita Sammy. And we'd have a chat, and he'd ask how my husband was, how's my family, which actually brings me on to one other thing I'd like to say. Sammy always took care of my husband. We don't have a lot of a Jewish family only because we don't. And Sammy was always there for him and for me. And I really appreciate that. And I really miss that. Because that's what a leader is about. A leader is about leading and about being there and about loving your people. And he loved us. So thank you to the youth for giving me an opportunity to say this, to pay homage to an amazing man. And really, Bizrat Hashem, they will grow up to be future Sammy Benaims.
Él me decía siempre cuando tenía najalá de mi padre, mira David, Shabbat de najalá de tu suegra, najalá de tu suegro, siempre, mira, voy a preparar el cefe que tengo yo en la noga, y él siempre le preparaba para ir a Perashá, para Shabbat de najalá, siempre sabía todo. Cuando era najalá de toda mi familia, sabía todo, y sabía, najalá tiene de Shabbat, el lunes esto, lo otro, él siempre estaba en todo.
Let me begin by saying I don't believe I'm worthy enough to speak about someone as great as Sammy Benaim. He was a spiritual giant in our time, and certainly one of the holiest people I've ever met. I do not have the honor of knowing him as well as other people in our great community. I don't have the thousands of stories other people do have. I know there are many stories. But when I was younger, we were neighbors. And thanks to my friendship with Yossi, and Shalom I said, but Yossi in particular, I was always around Marina Court. We weren't the best behaved children. And one quality that I think I should point out was, in all those years, with all the things we did, not once did I ever see him lose his temper. And that's something I wish I could have myself. He would take us to school in the mornings. I remember going to Marina Court, going to the house, and they would always give me a chewy vitamin before we left. And when you're young, having a key is quite important, particularly like 9, 10 years old. A key is really important because, especially in those days, it implied responsibility, you had access to something, you had power. And I always used to see him walking around with what looked like hundreds and hundreds of keys on his keychain. I used to think, this guy, he must be so important. He has a key to every door in Gibraltar. He must be able to do anything he wanted. But little did I know, it didn't mean that he could do anything he wanted. It meant that he was doing everything that everyone needed. And that I learned over the years. When my grandfather was alive, I used to go to La Shika, to Etz Chaim, often. And again, when you're young, you don't realize these things. You think of tefillah as a duty. You think, I just have to read these words, say these words, and I've done what I'm supposed to do. But it was only after going to Etz Chaim so often and listening to Sammy say tefillah, being chazan, that you realized, and I could probably pinpoint the exact Yom Kippur it was, or the Tisha B'Av that it was, but you realize that these words actually mean something, because you could see the emotion used to come out in him, what he would say. And I'm certain, in fact, I know, he was the one that gave me that blueprint for understanding that tefillah is not just saying stuff. It is actually, there are words, they mean things, and you have to personalize it, and it comes from the heart. And that was something that was very clear, and I can even see him do it. Years later, when I was coming back to Gibraltar, it was for Sukkot time, and he asked me if I could bring some lulavim over. I was living in London. He asked me to bring some lulavim over. I thought, great, finally, I have an opportunity to do something for this man, to do something for a person I admire so much and I respect so much, and I'm not going to let him down, no chance. So I went over to the dress he gave me, and it could only be described as a market for lulavim and torgim and everything. I'd never been to such a place outside of Israel, and there were hundreds of people there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take her out with me. I had collected over the years about 4 or 5 of those lulavim plastic bags you can put lulav in. I thought I could maybe put 3 or 4 if I needed to in each one of those. I have about 4 of them. That should be enough. How many people go to Etz Chaim anyway during Sukkot? That should be fine. So I approached the table, there's a rabbi there. I said that Sammy had sent me, and I'm pointing to my lulavim bags, and he looks at me and gives a big smile and points me to come around the back. I come around the back, and there were 6 massive boxes of lulavim. Must have been about 300 of them there. He said, "This is for you." I was thinking of running away at that time. I thought, what am I going to do with 6 massive? I'm talking about maybe about 5 foot long, about, I don't know, 12 inches or so in the width, and about 4 or 5 inches in height. And they were massive boxes, 6 of them. I thought, how am I going to do this? I thought, you know what, if I run now, no one's going to know anything. I just didn't see the guy. But no, I thought, there's no way I'm going to let down Mr. Benaim, no chance. So I took him with me, and I'm certain it's from his zechut that somehow the people in Gatwick Airport, the oversized luggage area in Gatwick Airport, they didn't charge me, they didn't check anything, they just let it through. I thought, post 2000, after 9/11, so on, they check everything. They're not going to allow me to take so many things like this, and they're going to check everything. Nothing, it just went right through. And anyway, they must have known who Sammy was. Not long ago, I was honored to be given another name by him. I know his tefillot were instrumental in providing me a refuah. Who knew that it was him throughout that time that needed a refuah? Because of him, you were lucky. Even if you had a small glimpse of the things he did, that he was dealing with, you were lucky even if you had a small glimpse of what he did, and the things that he was dealing with, and all the things you're always guaranteed in seeing whatever he did do. He always did it with a smile. I know when I came out and I saw him, I met him, he was one of the first people I saw in the hospital. Yeah, apparently he came to visit me often, and seeing his smile and his little nod and that said it all. And I'm just so grateful to have known him. Thank you.
Sammy was a very special man, in a very quiet but a very effective way. Everybody will have a lot of stories and anecdotes about him, but I have a couple of them. As a Kohen, he was always looking out for people to go out to Nora Chica to do Birkat Kohanim. I did go, and he always organized with my sons to go, with my son David in particular, and with my brothers, etc. But he was always very focused on the Kohanim and giving a lot of respect, which I certainly don't really deserve, but obviously he was following the halakha. And from a Talmud Torah perspective, Sammy was also a very special man. He was also always caring about the children, always asking about Talmud Torah, what there is he can actually do to help, etc. And he did all these things in a quiet and a humble way. And that was him. He was a great, quiet giant, and a giant who did things, not a giant who was quiet. If something that is there to learn is we should all try and emulate him as much as we can. It is very difficult to do so, of course, but even in small ways, all together, we might become Sammy. But one individual, certainly like myself, would find it very hard to do so. But he is also an inspiration, and B'ezras Hashem if we try, at least we'll try and get a bit more forward.
What can we say about Sammy Benaim? Great friend of mine. We go back a long way. He was Gemilut HaChasidim in person. Not only, as we all know, Etz Chaim, the Chevra, and so many other things. But I think the work that he did privately, on his own, without anybody knowing, was the thing that I think we are going to miss most in this community. I like to see him running about on his motorbike, on his moped, speeding, you know. That was Sammy. And he was just going to do some mitzvah here or there in between his work. I also remember so much on Shabbat, Chagim, you would see him dressed up in his pinstripe and his bowler hat in the afternoons after lunch, going up to visit the home, the hospital, people who were there, elderly people. It didn't matter who it was, he was there. I don't think, whilst we were all going off and having a rest, there was Sammy doing his great mitzvah of Gemilut Chasadim. Apart from that, there's a lot of people in this community, especially the elderly, who depended so much on him, who rang him up for everything, and there he was. I know even when he was doing the Guardia of Chevra, sometimes he would say, the guy who was supposed to come after me didn't come, so I've been here 4 or 5 hours. He never bothered, he didn't mind. I think we should all learn a lot from Sammy, do work for the community without any fuss, and hope the young generation will follow on his footsteps. They knew him, they knew what it was all about, and please God, we will go Michayil L'Chayil, but nevertheless, we'll be missing Sammy a lot.
The sudden loss of Sammy Benaim has had a tremendous impact on the community, and I think it's had an impact on the old, the young, the religious, the non-religious, and personally I have some special moments that I've shared with Sammy. Firstly, as the father of my good friend Yossi, I learned a lot from Sammy from a very young age. One particular incident that I can remember is one where Shalom, his son, was getting married in Lyon, and we took a flight. It was a very early morning flight, and I joined Yossi and his parents on the way to Malaga and the flight. And on the way, we had so many suitcases that one of the suitcases had to be put on the roof. And with the speed, the wind, I don't know what it was, the suitcases on the roof, suddenly we heard a bang in the middle of the motorway, and this was like 4 or 5 in the morning, and it was really dark. And I remember Sammy just having to stop on the shoulder and say, "Oh no, what's happened?" And obviously all the things from the wedding was in that suitcase, but amazingly Sammy kept, he didn't panic, he kept calm, and he told us not to worry. We're going to try and pick up as many things as we could, and there were me and Yossi and his father in the middle of the motorway at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to pick up things, but at no moment did Sammy shout, get angry. He kept calm, and I think that's something that I've seen in him in many other scenarios. Obviously, the special thing of Sammy was also that he was also firm. So when he came to spiritual matters, especially in synagogue, he didn't compromise there. So if you felt there was too much talking, especially I remember during like the Hakafot and the Hilulah, there was so much talking, he used to bang the teva and make it clear, that it was unacceptable and that people should stop. And those were the things that really affected him. And I think it's one of his special qualities that he had. On a more personal note, I got to know Sammy as I became treasurer of the Chevra, and we worked very closely together. And that's exactly where I saw his other good midot. And apart from his love for the Chevra, he was also very interested in the finances, and he always kept asking me, Abi, ¿cómo estamos de dinero? ¿Hay dinero en el banco? Sí, no. And he was also very interested, in when we had any repairs or projects. He was always looking for ways to find the best deal. One of the responsibilities that I have as treasurer of the Kevra is to charge burial fees to the families, which is a very sensitive thing to do, especially during difficult moments when you're dealing with families or in bereavement. And it's even harder sometimes when you don't really know the family and they might not be very connected to the community. But what always made it really easy was with dealing with such people is that Sammy was always close to them, and they always asked for Sammy, and having that special connection made it all much easier. And I think in these cases, Sammy was their connection to the community. And you can see from here, how loved Sammy was by the religious people of the community, the people who act in the community, and also the not so religious. And I think that's a great lesson that we should learn. Another special thing is that Sammy, he did a lot of things in private, and I know personally that he prayed for me a lot, which is, I always consider him as a very special person, and his prayers meant a lot to me. And especially during the Hakafot and other special moments, he gave me special berachot. And one particular time, a few months before he passed away, he called me. He says, "Look, Abi, I need your help for something in the Noashika." My office was around the corner. So he said, "Look, whenever you can, call me. I just need your help for a few minutes." So I went, and what was it? He says that he had a pigeon that laid a nest in Noashika. And he said, "Look, it's a special mitzvah. And there are many segulot from doing Shiloh Haken. I'd like you to do it." And it was very special because I thought that was, he sold it to me as if I was doing him the favor, and really he was giving me the opportunity of doing the mitzvah. And I think that was Sammy. He was doing, and he must have done lots of these things in private that no one ever found out. And I think I and personally, and a lot of people in the community will miss him tremendously.
This Mishnah tells us that the world stands on three very important things: Torah, Avodah, and Gemilut Chasadim. When I read this Mishnah, it reminds me of Sammy. My friendship with Sammy goes back many years, and I'll start the way I experienced Sammy from when I arrived to Gibraltar. When I came to Gibraltar, I was told, the only synagogue with air conditioning is Etz Chaim, and therefore the best place to spend Tisha B'Av is in Etz Chaim. So I went to Etz Chaim just for the air conditioning. Eventually, all the other synagogues, or many of the others, introduced the air conditioning in a Bet HaKnesset, but I decided the place where I'm going to stay is Etz Chaim, because this is where I experienced the true depth, the meaning of tefillah, especially the kinot, the way Sammy was saying the kinot, with all his kavanah, with all his emotions, with real tears, real kavanah. And I felt, this is where I could connect with the Bet HaMikdash the best way possible. This is the koach of tefillah of Sammy. We know his tefillot also, we always said with tremendous sincerity and kavanah. And this was a very strong pillar of tefillah in our community. But my connection on a daily basis was the connection of Torah. Sammy joined my shiur of Daf Yomi some years ago, and he came every morning on a regular basis. And when Sammy wasn't with us, I noticed that he always caught up the dapim that we missed. I don't know when he learned them, but he was always, making sure, sometimes in Shar Shamayim, upstairs or different places, he was always making sure to catch up with the dapim. And even the last few months, I did not know that Sammy wasn't well, but for some reason, so he couldn't come to my shiur on a daily basis. But then I would see him keeping up to pace, keeping up on the same daf as us every single day. And this was a tremendous dedication for Torah. Now I must tell you, Sammy did not just, wasn't just a regular member of the shiur. Sammy had a very deep understanding of the sugya. I don't know if people knew his greatness in Torah. He had a very good understanding of the sugyot. He came up with beautiful questions, and he was a very, very wise person. But not only in the Gemara that we learned. Whenever Sammy found a beautiful Dvar Torah, he saw a chidush, he'd love to share it with us or with other people. You could see Kihem Chayenu, the Torah was his life. No wonder that all his sons came out with the Chachamim, because they saw the truth in the home, that Torah was the most important thing, and it was real. And finally, I want to talk about his Gmilut Chasadim. Now, I'm a bit disappointed about this interview, because what I'm finding out now is that Sammy had many friends. I thought I was his only friend in Gibraltar. Whenever I came to Etz Chaim, he made me feel as if wow, my best friend has arrived. And now here everybody else feels the same way. But this shows the greatness of Sammy. Everybody was special in his eyes, no difference what kind of person he was, who he was. He had the same welcome as if, wow, you made my day for coming to Etz Chaim. And this was his Gemilut Chasadim. I had many personal stories. I want to mention one story with him. A few years ago, I ordered myself a very expensive set of Arba Minim. Sammy always gave an option, in the last few years, an option of buying an expensive set. So I ordered an expensive set, or an etrog, etc. And the last minute, I decided to go to America for Yom Tov. So I called him from America and says, I'm really sorry, I ordered my Arba Minim, and it's expensive. I said, no problem, don't worry. There's no issue at all. I don't know what he did with it. I'm pretty sure he paid for it from his own pocket, but I have no idea. But he made me feel as if nothing was an issue, nothing's a problem. And this was always the way Sammy dealt. Money was never an issue. He wanted to make people feel comfortable. I remember when we did this last charity in Gibraltar, so at just the time I had an injury on my leg, and he told me, we are under the sponsors already, the Benaims at the page, and he was one of the sponsors. So I don't know if I'll be able to help you. But then he gave me a page with Refuah Shelema. So this is how, he wanted me to feel good about it. It was a bit embarrassing because then I got many people calling me, says, what's the matter with you, family members? We saw on your page, Refuah Shelema. I just told them, don't worry, it's just my foot. But anyway, but this was the way he cared about every single person. So it is a great loss for us that Sammy is not amongst us anymore. But we learned so much from him in all these three things: how we should approach Torah, how we should approach Tefillah, and how Gemilut Chasadim should be. So Yehi Zichro Baruch, his name will always be remembered for blessing.
What can we say about Sammy Alav Shalom? Sammy, we all know he was a very special person. Baruch Hashem, I had the zechut of being as part of Kahal Kadosh Etz Chaim with him all my life, and I was able to observe him with his level of devotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his kavanot, and that impression that it leaves on you as a child growing up. And even though nowadays we don't have much patience for tefillah, it always struck me how he kept strong. And he kept, even though being in such a position as Chazan, normally would always be that people around you, you'd have opponents and stuff like that. Sammy somehow managed to get everyone around him to love him. And that is an amazing feat for a leader, is especially in a synagogue. So what could also be said was he was always very consistent. We never used to worry about coming late to synagogue because we always knew someone was there to start, which we're now having to deal with ourselves, and it's something that we can only admire as we try to follow in his footsteps. One thing that always strikes me is not just in synagogue, but going outside of synagogue into the general, with the general kahal, both in the Jewish community and outside, is that he always used to greet people besever panim yafot, and never used to get involved in arguments. That was something that. As I was been thinking about it since he's passed away, since he's left us, is probably got to do with the fact that he used to appreciate the Tselem Elokim within everyone. I mean, again, going back to Etz Chaim became a hub of people that used to come to Gibraltar to live, and they used to seek refuge in Etz Chaim. Why? Because Sammy would care for them. Not only that, so don't think about families. Now let's think about teenagers. I'm being interviewed by teenagers now. Etz Chaim on Shabbat afternoons used to be, for Mincha, it used to be packed with teenagers. And he used to give a chance to everyone. Now, we weren't the quickest synagogue, and why would the teenagers come? I think it's because Sammy's presence used to be so welcoming.
Hashem yishmor kol hakahal hakadosh hazeh. My dear friends, it's very, very difficult for me to speak about the passing away of our dear Sammy Benaim. I know him from many years ago, since the early days he came from Tetuan. It's over 50 years ago. And then lately I have the great honor, both Esther and myself, have the great honor of being mechutanim with Ben Chayim Lechayim and with Ani also. The day he passed away, he left a massive vacuum to the community, and it was very distressing and emotional because he passed away in an extraordinary way. He passed away in normal circumstances. He would have been surrounded by his friends and by all the Chevra as being president of our Chevra Gemilut Chasadim. But it was different. He passed away and we had to rush to the scene, but that day was a very, very important day in our calendar. It was the day that Ben Chayim Lechayim, my dear friend David Benaim, was presenting a sefer to Etz Chaim on his 70th birthday. So the time that Sammy's neshama was going to Shamayim, instead of being around his bed, the kahal was rejoicing to Hashem Yitbarach with the presentation of a Sefer Torah to his beloved synagogue. To think that the moment that his neshama was going to Shamayim and just a great mitzvah, people were rejoicing, happy, doing the things that Sammy loved for his synagogue, because the majority of the kahal did not know what was happening. Going back to the life of Sammy, Sammy was a very special person. He was here in Gibraltar, first and foremost, a magnificent husband, father, and a leader of a congregation. He ran the Etz Chaim by himself. He was for many years in the board, president of the Chevra. We start with the board. He had a very important and difficult portfolio of kasherut, which he excelled in that. Secondly, when he did his life dedicated to Etz Chaim, whether he was preparing the Sefarim for the occasion by himself, which I can tell you it's very difficult, dedicating the Chazanut for always in Etz Chaim, and also he made sure that we abide by all our customs. One thing which he gave a lot of importance was to the Meldados of Shana Rabbah and Shavuot. He made it sure that it was run the way it was always run the whole night. It was very difficult, but he did it. And then also he made sure that things like the Petirah Moshe Rabbeinu, he made sure with a handful of us there saying the tikkun there, and I rejoiced at it enormously because he explained to me the conversation between Moshe Rabbeinu and Hashem Yitbarach, that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to die without going into Israel. That was very moving. He was very, very learned, and amongst all, very humble. He portrayed something which is very important, Mekabel ha'adam besimcha, as the incidentally was in this week's Pirkei Avot.
he would do anything for anybody. He was very much dedicated to his family, to his brothers, to his sisters, always doing things for them, and for the community. He would phone people to see how they were. He went up and down to the home. Then he would do things which people, after the passing away of somebody in the community, he made sure himself, he was a very busy man, that the buns for the mishmarot were ordered. He took it upon himself. He went to remove all the shoes from the house, so that the person the Avelindi don't have any burden. So I'm limited by time, but we are missing him dearly, and Hashem took a diamond, and the only way forward which we can console ourselves is by carry on and following his ways of life, which made everybody happy. And we all pray. At the moment we are in a very difficult position with the COVID-19 in worldwide, and we pray, we ask him to plead to Hashem Barach for this to go, and to see us, please God, all in Yerushalayim, with all our synagogues, when Mashiach comes very soon. My dear friends, I want to end up with the very happy times that we had together with Sammy and Annie. It was great company. We laughed a lot. He had one thing, which was that he always had Gibraltar in his heart. Everywhere we went, whether Paris, Israel, he saw people in the synagogue. He said, "Mira, ese se parece a ese de Libertad. Ese se parece." So it was always a good laugh. We went many years ago on holiday as singles to when I left the army 50 years ago. Then we have been to many holidays together, and it's great company. We miss you a lot, Sammy. We love you.
Hello, good evening. Firstly, I would like to thank the boys from school for organizing friends of Sammy Alav Shalom, to say a few words or anecdotes about him. Sammy was, together with Rabbi Chaim Sananes, one of my best friends. He, of course, was very great in Hasadim. He was a big Bar Hesed in every word, in every way, with everybody. Always helping people, amazing. He went out of his way just to help people. For sure, in Etz Chaim, they're missing him a lot now, because he was the Chazan, the Shamash, the Parnas. He was everything in Etz Chaim. They must be missing him a lot. He would call me. Unfortunately, he only called me because he was the head of the Chevra Kadisha. So he used to call me for the cemetery when there was something to do in the cemetery. He called me, and we worked in the Chevra. But for two things, I think Sammy Benaim was exceptional. One, for organizing the meldados. Meldados are when we sit at night and we learn the whole night through, or the day. There are a few meldados in a year. One was for the 7th of Adar, when it's the Nachala of Moshe Rabbeinu. So I don't think it's going to continue now, because the last years, Sammy was alone with 2 or 3 members of the Kahal who went. We didn't have a minyan. But when he came from Tetuan, we had a big minyan. He had his brothers here and members of his family. So the Benaim family had a lot to do with that. And the other meldados were just on the Erev, on the eve of Rosh Chodesh Elul, when we got together and we stayed up all night That Meldad is called Tikkun Karetz. Unfortunately, also, it's not been done in Gibraltar anymore. We are going to miss him for that. When Rabbi Sanandis passed away, he asked me they asked me that I should do the Pidyon and Nefesh, which is a tefillah and a ta'nit for the well-being of the Kehillah. And about 10 years ago, I wasn't feeling too well. I couldn't do the ta'nit. So Sammy, straight away, he volunteered to do the ta'nit, and he's doing the Pidyon and Nefesh. It's called Pidyon and Nefesh. And up to, as far as I know, up to just before he passed away, he was doing that ta'nit. He was also a good, lively, funny character, but it's not the time now to talk about jokes. I miss him terribly, and like friends, he was like my brother, and I hope that in Shamayim he's pleading and asking and praying to Hashem for the Kehillah of Gibraltar. All the best.
To me, Mr. Benaim was like a star. Even during the day, when you don't see him, he was always there, shining and caring for you. For example, I was once unwell at home with a small throat infection, and I see him a few days later, and he goes, "Oh, how are you feeling, David?" And this says a lot about someone who cares about every person in the community. He just got a love for everything. He's also got love for Torah, for Judaism. For example, whenever we had the charity project, and I asked him to donate a few weeks before. I had forgotten about it, and he puts a donation on my page with a message, "David, this is for you should come for Birkat Kohanim in Etz Chaim," and it just shows me how much someone can love people and Judaism and what a genuine person he was.
So I always knew Sammy was a great man, but it took us all these few months while we were videoing for me to realize that he wasn't only a great man, he was a legendary man, and he helped so many people. I think he's an example for all of us, and his name should be remembered.
Every Shabbat Mincha in Etz Chaim, Sammy would look around the synagogue at all the youth and check which boys hadn't gone a mitzvah for the Sefer yet. He would do it, he would care for every single boy there, make sure that no one was missed out. We'd really miss him.
One particular thing that I remember that Sammy had done for me was that every time I used to see him in the streets, every morning, he used to always ask me how I was doing and how was school. And I also used to ask him, we had to have a small talk, and it really made my day do it every time he used to ask me those things.
I didn't know don't have very many stories of Sammy Benaim myself, only the ones I've heard from other people, and it's just made me realise what an amazing person he is, and I'm sure that everyone will greatly miss him.
So this happened a few weeks before he passed away. We were looking for minyan for Tisha B'Av Mincha because we were flying to Israel, and we had no one to read the Parashah for us. Sammy left his bed in the hospital to come and read the Parashah for us. Only someone as special as Sammy would have done that.
I remember Sammy Benaim always included everyone in everything, and it was my grandfather's Nachala once, and there were a lot of Levim in this synagogue, and he made sure to call me up for Hashkava for my grandfather.
Sammy had a unique way of doing everything. One time, for example, I was here in Etz Chaim for Mincha, and there was a lot of people talking, and you could see he was very upset by this. But instead of telling everyone off or telling them to be quiet, he went up to the Teva and gave a Dvar Torah, and that was the best way, because after that everyone stopped talking. And this unique way we miss now.
So when Sammy left us, we in Etz Chaim especially felt it a lot more. Now we set up a whole committee to do the things that he did, and we're all finding it difficult. It showed us really what Sammy did and what an amazing person he did. He did so much for the synagogue, and now we're really feeling that now he's gone.
when we were in the Fusat Yehuda doing the Tehillim for my grandfather, at the end when Sammy did the name changing tefillah, whilst he was doing it, he was crying, and it showed me how much he cared for my grandfather, and shows how much he cares for everyone. And little do we know, he was the one who most needed that, which shows how he cared so much about everyone else other than himself.
Okay, something I learned about Mr. Benaim was that he had never-ending kindness. So once me and my friend Benaim, we were walking down, I think it was Main Street, and as you know, 10 people coming up to you asking you for money, it's not easy. I mean, you have to start putting in the coins. But you know, Mr. Benaim, he sees us with a smile, he comes up to us. We didn't have to go up to him, he literally came up to us and just looks at us and just pinching our cheeks and giving us money. It's just something that we have to learn and just remember that he was a man of kindness, and this is what people need in the world.
Mr. Benaim was always there for me when GBSS used to give the students raffle tickets to sell. I used to go to Tefillah and try to sell them, and Sammy Benaim saw me, and he didn't even have to, I didn't even have to ask him. He just came up to me and says, "Just give me £10 worth of raffle tickets," and I think he's a very good example.
Mr. Benaim was an amazing man, and his kindness, he had a crazy amount of kindness. And I remember a special story that happened to me and happened to my whole family, that after my grandparents passed away, he would always be before every Chag, before every Shabbat. So as every week on Erev Shabbat, he would call the house and he would ask my parents, he would ask us all how we're doing, and he would wish us a good Shabbat, a good Chag. And this really touched us all. And when Sammy Benaim passed away, it really touched us, and those phone calls that we used to get from him every Chag and every Shabbat, it was really dearly missed by us all.
Mr. Benaim has taught me the importance of Birkat Kohanim. Every time I would meet him, he would remind me to come to Et Chaim to say Birkat Kohanim on Shabbat. He made me think about the importance and what an effect it does on the Kahal and on the Kohanim, and his sudden passing will for sure leave an impact in my life.
During the process of collecting the recordings for Sammy Benaim and our Shalom, I have gathered a wealth of information from my elders of our community. I now view our members in a very different light. Every time I would come to Et Chaim, I would feel welcomed by Sammy Benaim with his warm smile. I thank him very much, and this project has created miracles for me, and thank you, Uncle Jimmy, on behalf of the youth who has initiated this lovely project.
In the short period of time that I have been living in Gibraltar, I have unfortunately not had the zchut to meet the great influential leader of the Jewish Gibraltar community, Mr. Benaim alav shalom. However, through this project of the youth of presenting Hakarat Tov and gratitude, which is gratitude, I have been able to witness and experience recordings which gave me a true insight and idea of what a holy and generous man he was in this community.
Sammy alav shalom was a very close person to my family, and was very relative to all of us as a community, and also did a lot for this synagogue at Chaim as a chazan alongside my grandfather. And a way that I saw this action that he used to do was when he used to give me, especially me, since my bar mitzvah, the Sefer, Gelilah, Call Me Up, Aliyot, whatever. He always used to want to give me Aliyot and everything, because he saw that he wants to give it to his family, and he saw that his family was more important than everything else, and he realized that if he gives, people will give back, and what we're doing with this video is just giving back to what he deserved. And I think this is what he represents,
Early July, a group of boys were sitting here with me, plus a few others that are at the moment away in Israel, organized a camp. The camp lasted only for just 9 days, and it was an incredible, huge success in bonding, understanding each other, looking out for each other. And I think that is a true reflection of our dear friend Sammy. He was all that in one person, which is quite hard. If you all look up in the English dictionary, the word selflessness, really that translation should be changed and put selflessness, and then just put after that Sammy Benaim, because he was undoubtedly one of the most selfless people I have ever met. Whilst my brother Levi was in hospital, one day Sammy, who obviously unbeknown to us was going for his treatments, came in with this bag, which I hold here, this plastic bag, which obviously at the time didn't mean much, it was just a plastic bag, full of 50p coins, and he came to do a pidyon nefesh for Levi. Now, if one stops for 1 second and thinks back, you think back to that precise moment, there's a man who's literally, I don't want to say the word dying, it's a very strong word, but who's literally doesn't have much time left in this world. And there he is, coming to visit my brother, and he would come often and stay and talk. And performing the Pidyon Nefesh, I think back to it and it always brings tears to my eyes. The beauty of Sammy is that for these kids here, and for all the young generation in our community, they have been brought up having this incredible human being around them. And without even them knowing, they have learned what it is to be good and to be kind. And for many generations, I think they and many others in our community will carry that flag, the flag of what he represented. He was truly an exceptional human being. Kids take things for granted. We all take things for granted. Had we known he was coming there to visit my brother, would we have done something differently? You guys, you see people in the streets and you give them a kiss and you say hello 1 second. Do you know is that going to be the last kiss you give that person? So think. I think it's a lesson for all of us to think, to stop and think, and not be in a hurry and rushing off because I haven't got time. We all have time. And if there's someone that doesn't have a lot of people around them, spend time, invest your time like Sammy did. There's our lesson. Our lesson is to carry what he did. We should carry it on. He did it so naturally, we should do it the same. All of you are very young, but when you leave Gibraltar, you will see that what you have here is unique to us. This is your heritage. And he was a huge part of it. May Hashem bless you all, and I give you all my best wishes, and may we always remember Sammy with a smile, because he was always smiling.